All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ASP.NET Core Community Stand-Up, where we talk about the latest updates to .NET web development. I'm Daniel Roth. I'm the Principal Product Manager for ASP.NET Core and Blazor on the .NET team. It's great to be here with you all. And today, I'm joined by a very special guest. We have Youssef here, a software engineer on the ASP.NET Core team. Welcome, Youssef.
Hi, Daniel. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
It's great to have you here with us today. All right,
Thank
so
you.
Today's topic, very exciting. I don't know if everyone saw this, but let me share my screen. But last week, we shipped .NET 11 Preview 6, the latest preview update to .NET 11. It is just loaded with new features and improvements. If you haven't downloaded it and tried it yet, you should do so. It is pretty awesome. And what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at all the new features that are available now for ASP.NET Core and Blazor users in this release. So if you scroll down here, you can see all of the improvements across the .NET platform. Lots of core library improvements. The system text JSON support for C# unions has now landed. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later. New runtime improvements, lots of JIT improvements and performance, native AOT stuff. But today we're going to be focusing primarily on the stuff for web developers, things that matter to you all who are building web apps with ASP.NET Core and Blazor. And as you can see, we've got a big long list of things that have now landed in this release. I think we actually even missed one or two that ended up having to add to the release notes a little after the fact. It didn't make it into the blog. Should probably fix that. Sorry about that. But yeah, there's so much stuff to keep track of that we can't even keep the list fully updated. So we're gonna kind of try and hit the big ones, and we'll talk to some of the other ones. And hopefully this will help you understand what's new, how you can try it out, how you can kick the tires, give us that preview feedback so that we can then make sure that everything is in tip-top shape by the time we ship .NET 11 later this year. We're getting really close. Preview 6, I think, is the second to last preview release that we plan to do. We're going to do Preview 7 next month, so one more preview. And at that point, we're in lockdown mode. We're going to be prepping for our first release candidate in the following month. Depending on how that goes, we'll probably ship a second release candidate just so that we make sure things are in great shape, and then ship a stable release in November. That's the plan. So please give us that feedback. Try the new features out and let us know what you think. To help you do that, we're going to go through them all. And the first one we're going to look at is the new async validation support for minimal APIs. And Youssef, do you want to, I know you've been personally invested in this feature and working hard on it.
Yes.
Can you tell us all about it? I'll remove my screen. Let me know when do you want me to show your screen?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll get your screen up so people can see what this is all about.
All right. So async validation, it's a feature that has been very highly requested for some time. If you have been doing any validation in .NET, you probably came across the data annotations APIs like iValidatable object or validation attribute. And as you already know, these APIs coming from .NET Runtime team, we're only supporting the synchronous methods. In .NET 11, we have worked with the .NET Runtime team and the data annotation folks to make these APIs more rich and support async validation. On top of that, we are building the support for async validation and the new APIs that are provided by .NET Runtime team, and build them into ASP.NET Core and specifically Microsoft Extensions validation. So I have a quick demo here to show you all the new APIs and all the great stuff that we have in .NET 11. So if you are not familiar with Microsoft Extensions validation, the way you want to use Microsoft Extensions validation is in your entry point, you call add validation on your services, and it will just work. No magic there.
It's nice when it's just that easy, huh, Youssef? And it then just works. It's a great.
Actually, there is a bit of magic happening behind the scenes, but like all the user needs to do is add validation, and we will take care of everything that needs to happen behind the scenes. Um, and in this sample, I have 3 APIs, but I will first go through the first 2 APIs. The first one is register async, which takes a register request, and the second one is register sync, which takes a registers request sync object. And if I scroll a little bit to the register request object that we have, we have here a username, which has a unique username attribute. And the unique username attribute is an async validation attribute, which is the new API from data annotations that supports implementing async validation. I have a kind of a dummy implementation here to simulate like some asynchronous work using await task delay with 1 second delay. So you can imagine this is calling some other online service or calling into your database to do some checks or whatever async work that you want to do in this attribute, and then it gets back with some validation result. Either it's successful or it's failing. In contrast, we have register request sync. And oh, by the way, on async validation attribute, async validation attribute still inherits from the old validation attribute. And so you still have to implement as a synchronous is valid method. You have to override it and provide something. If you are not able to provide something, like your logic cannot really be implemented synchronously, you will have to throw invalid operation exception saying, well, my attribute doesn't support this. And if any client doesn't support async validation and ended up calling your attribute synchronously, well, there is nothing that can be done if you cannot support synchronous.
Yeah, and and that's really important, right? Like, because like if your attribute, if your validation rule is trying to impose some key constraint, but it has to run asynchronous, but then someone tries to run a synchronous validation pass on the object, you probably don't want that to just like silently like pass without your validation rule kicking in. So throwing in that case is actually the right choice. Don't put a no op in there unless that is literally okay. Like if your validation rule is fine by just no opping in the synchronous path, okay. But like most of the time you're trying to enforce some piece of logic, and if someone tries to only do synchronous validation and you can't then enforce that validation rule, throwing is what you should generally do. So that's the guidance. I don't know if we're going to have some sort of analyzer or something to help people with that, but yeah, I know I've stumbled across tripped up on that one. Sometimes AI might even mess that up. So teach it and say, no, this must be asynchronous validation logic, so we must throw in the synchronous path. That's the guidance.
Yes, and either way, like you shouldn't expect like both methods to be called. Like they are not like additional to each other's. Like if the component you're using, like Microsoft Extensions Validation, supports async validation, it will always call the asynchronous one and will never call the synchronous one. The synchronous one will be called only if you have like some other library that wasn't yet updated to support async validation, but otherwise this is not going to be called anyways.
Yeah, it's either just sync or just async. You don't get both in the model. That's the way the system works. And I know we've had lots of discussions on the team about this behavior and trying to get this right. Like, I mean, like you said, these attributes are old. Like they have data annotations has been around for a long time. They're used all over the .NET ecosystem. So trying to figure out what's the right way to weave the async support into this layer of the stack, took a lot of thought. Definitely interested in folks' feedback on that. If you find it trips you up in other ways that we didn't anticipate, that's definitely feedback that we're going to want to hear about.
Yep. And on the other side, I have a synchronous validation, which I'm calling the attribute unique username sync. And in there, I am actually trying to do the bad thing that you should never ever do in production, which is get await or get result, basically sync or async.
Dream
Here,
of
let's
OG.
say, let's assume I have is valid async here that is doing the database call or doing whatever async work. And then because the attribute doesn't support the old way of doing things, doesn't support async validation, you end up like blocking and waiting for the asynchronous task to complete in a blocking way here. This is super bad. You should never do it. And this demo is going to show you why in a minute. So these are basically the two first APIs that I have here. And along with that, I have also prepared a client which is going to send 300 requests for each of the two APIs. And we'll measure the time it took for each case. So the client is simple, like you can assume it's like the web browser of 300 users on 300 different machines doing this. It's a very simple client. And what should be interesting to see here is if I start my web application, it is building and should be running now. And if I start my client, until it runs, I'm basically running the async, the 300 requests async first, and after all of them complete, I do the synchronous variant.
So sync then async is what we're doing. That's all right. Yeah. Sync then async.
Okay. Sorry then.
Synchronous first, then asynchronous, right? That's what we're doing.
No, I'm doing the.
Oh, sorry, I literally got it backwards. Yeah, async then sync. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and if I get back here, you can see the 300 async validation completed in 2 seconds. The equivalent code, same delay with the synchronous validation took like 6 seconds. And the reason for that is when you do sync over async, what you are effectively doing is you are blocking a thread pool thread, and you are eventually causing a thread pool starvation. So the thread pool cannot longer be able to like keep up with the user requests and cannot handle any requests in a timely manner. And then you are relying on the internal thread pool stuff to like detect that, okay, there are many thread pool threads that are blocked, then I'm going to inject more threads and create more threads in the thread pool to accommodate for the blocked threads. And eventually, if I increase the number to a much higher number than 300, it might even like bring the whole server down and not just like be slow, because that's basically how denial of service attacks might look like.
Lang25 commented, every time you block a thread pool thread, the great Stephen Tove, architect, he cries, save the tear. We can't, watching him cry is very harrowing.
Yeah, we definitely don't want Stephen Tove to cry watching a thread being blocked.
And it's not just a performance concern, right? Like this can literally like cause stability and reliability issues on your server.
Yes,
aspnetcore in its mission to be efficient and high performance is particularly sensitive to this. So yeah, don't do sync over async in an ASP.NET Core app. If you were using this pattern previously with your data annotations, like time to do some AI based cleanup maybe to find these things and address them. We have a new feature for you now that you can use instead.
Yes, I intentionally wanted to put this example to like let everyone know don't do this. It's if you think you're going around with a lack of async validation support this way, it's not the right way to do it. And finally, I have a third API which is using async validatable object, which is a counter part of validatable object. This interface also inherits from validatable object, so you still have to provide the synchronous validate. And in this case, you might just want to throw an exception. And what I have here is a 3-second delay and then saying the object is valid. This is going to simulate any async work that you will have. And the interesting part about this one is I'm having a request that is taking an array of this delayed validatable object and just returning OK. The interesting part here is I'm also sending 300 requests for this, and in each request I'm creating an array of 100 delayed validatable. Each of these is supposed to take 3 seconds. But if I run this, I shouldn't have closed the previous running console, but we can wait again for it. Here is the interesting thing. Even though I am validating 100 objects, they all took 3 seconds. And this is because we try to execute all the validation tasks. Like we kick off all the validation tasks concurrently. We don't await each element of collections individually. We just go and start all the tasks and then do task win all at the end. So you just take the 3 seconds at the end instead of 3 seconds multiplied by 100 objects, so 300 seconds.
So they basically get all validated in parallel. Is that the way to think about it? That they're all happening kind of simultaneously?
I would say probably concurrently is a more accurate term. Because like if you have some slow synchronous logic before you do your async calls, those synchronous parts are not really running in parallel. So we just like kick off all the tasks and we don't do anything special there.
Nice. Cool.
So I think that's it for the validation demo, and I hope you're going to make some good use of this feature, and feel free to reach out to us on GitHub on .NET aspnetcore repo and let us know if you have any feedback on this feature.
There was a couple that was great, by the way. Thank you, Youssef. Yeah, I love the details there on like handling async and not making sure people know not to do sync over async. Someone was asking about the fact that I'm guessing this was the async validation object, that the is valid async takes an object there, and they're wondering like why no generic version. And to be clear, like Youssef is on the ASP.NET Core team. There's a runtime team that actually owns the data annotations APIs that we then build on top of. So we don't directly own these design decisions, but we were pretty involved in discussing this with them. Do you have any thoughts on generic support?
I'm not aware of any plans to have any kind of generics validation attributes. I think the challenge there might be that the attribute gets applied to like arbitrary properties, and you don't necessarily know at compile time what the type is. We could in theory ship some generic variant of the attribute and like force the attribute to be applied to properties of the same types that you're using for the attribute. But I'm not aware of any plans on .NET Runtime side
Yeah.
to have support for this. It might be something to bring over to .NET Runtime repo and start an API proposal and get that reviewed. I think all API proposals on .NET Runtime side are live streamed, so you might even watch your API proposal being discussed live.
That's right. I think that's on the .NET Foundation channel. Yeah. So if you have ideas on like how things could be made generic, like feel free to propose them. But there is no current support for that we're aware of, and no plans to add it. Cool. And then I don't know where this question came from exactly. Did you? I don't know if you showed it JSON content or if this was someone just commenting on how JSON content works in aspnetcore, but they were just commenting that it's not taking in the JSON serialization settings. And I mean, it's not really a question, it's a statement. I believe this is true, that you will just get the default JSON serialization settings used. And aspnetcore even tweaks them a little bit to make them sort of the web variant of those things. So yes, I believe this is a true statement. Correct? Is that correct, Youssef? Or any thoughts on this?
I'm not very sure, to be fair.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So Tom Topes, we think that is accurate. Cool. All right. So that's great. Okay, so that's async validation. Thank you, Youssef. That was lovely. So let's look at some other things that are new. So we just did async validation. Next up, let's take a look at automatic cross-origin, cross-site request forgery protection, which we've just added. So browsers, they just keep getting better, adding new features, adding more security, making the web platform even more mature. There's been a long-standing support in browsers for adding metadata to requests based off of these headers, like the fetch site header, the origin header, to give you information about whether or not a fetch request was actually from your site of origin or if it's coming from someplace else, right? And when it comes from someplace else, that might be someone trying to forge a request to your site using a cookie that may have been already set up over there, and then you end up with a forged request and a security problem. Browsers have these headers to help you protect against that. In aspnetcore, we have had cross-site request forgery protections for a long time with our anti-forgery middleware, where we mint anti-forgery tokens and you like attach them to forms and all this machinery. But what we haven't had is like just built-in support for using the more modern features that the browser just has baked into it that you can just use, which are lighter weight and have had a lot of good design thought around them. Well, guess what? In .NET 11 Preview 6, we now support CSRF protection using these browser features, which means you can lighten up your app and also feel like you have the deeper layers of security. So just to show how this works, like here's a Blazor form, and imagine that this is a form on my website that I can transfer some money to a particular account, and then some nasty person sets up a phishing attack, gets someone to click on a link in an email that points them to this site and says, hey, you should claim this prize. And when they click this link, it forges a request to my site to try and actually transfer some money. And this is what you would use anti-forgery protections normally to deal with. We've had the old anti-forgery middleware for a long time, but now and I'll show that this won't work. Let me bring up the dev tools, and so we can see what's happening here on the network. Preserve log. Yep, that looks great. So if I try to send this, so you can see here with the CSRF maybe put this side by side so it's a little easier to see. Is that a little better? Yeah, that looks a little better. Okay, so we sent a request to the other app, to the actual Blazor application. And if we look at the payload, it's trying to do transfer to attacker's account $5,000 from someone else's account. So that's no good. But fortunately, the request was rejected as a bad request. And that's because if you look down here in the request headers, you can see that the browser is kindly putting these headers on the request to say this was a fetch request, and it is cross-site. It did not originate from the original site. And aspnetcore now has built-in support that looks at this request metadata that cannot be modified by JavaScript, and enforces that these requests should only come from the original site. If we look at the code for the application, there's nothing that you even really need to do. In fact, you just do less if you to remove features that you technically don't really need anymore. So here's the form. It's just a normal edit form in Blazor. No anti-forgery token stuff here needed at all. In program CS, when we look at how things are set up, you can see that we're not calling anymore app.use anti-forgery, which is the old anti-forgery middleware. You just don't need that anymore. Simply by using create builder, we will set up this anti-forgery protection for you. So it's just there, it's available, works great. If you still want to use the old anti-forgery protection, you can absolutely use it. You can use it as like a defense in depth thing to handle older browsers. That's still there, but technically don't need it anymore for most modern browsers, all modern browsers, honestly. So actually in .NET 11 Preview 7, we're I think we have explicitly in the Blazor web template to use the old anti-forgery middleware. We're pulling that out, and you can just rely on the new feature. Okay, so that's that new support. Let me see if were there any questions. A bunch of chat about what people are building. Preventing cross-site. Let's see this one. Preventing cross-site requests is absolutely great, but allowing them is the hard part in my experience. yeah. Cores, right? Like cross-origin request sharing, I think is what it stands for. Enabling another site to actually call your site safely is done through cores. We do have cores features, and yes, configuring cores correctly has been a long-standing pain point. Hopefully, our docs and AI can help you do that. But we want to make sure though that you are secure by default in your application. Okay, cool. So that's cross-site request forgery. Next, let's talk about C# unions. So, new feature in .NET 11 is the new C# union support, where you can define union types. They're kind of like a combination of various types. I've got a union type defined right here. This pet type, which could be either a dog or a cat, and we've got the dog and the cat, defined up above. So that language feature has been in the works for a little while in .NET 11. I think you have to turn it on as like a preview language feature in your project settings. Is that in here? I think you have to do this to actually get the new C# unions stuff to light up in .NET 11. So if it's not working for you, that might be why. But once you've got that, you can then use the unions feature. And in .NET 11 Preview 6, the JSON serialization stack, system text JSON, now supports serializing and deserializing unions, which we have then integrated, of course, into ASP.NET Core, so that when you're building APIs and you're trying to produce JSON payloads or deserialize JSON payloads, like receive requests, C# union support is now enabled. And it's also plumbed into the OpenAPI generation support, so you get proper Open APIs. So if we look down here, I've got a couple of minimal API endpoints set up. So right down here, we have this map get that's going to, takes an ID and then returns a pet. And you can see, depending on the ID, if it's 0, we're always going to return Rex the dog. If it's not, we're going to return a cat. Okay. And we're saying that this returns a union type. It returns the pet union type. I believe that's needed because otherwise you don't know if this is returning a dog or is this returning a cat. So that's how you can annotate your delegate to say what it actually has for its return. Okay, and so let's try that out. I'm going to have a HB file here set up, and you can see I was playing around with this earlier. And let's try just setting this request right here. We're going to do a get, and we're going to try and get pet 0. That should return our dog for you dog lovers out there. And if we want to get a cat, we can send a request and we get our cat, which has the completely different shape. All right. So we're able to, kind of morph the response type, but I'll have it all be kind of constrained to just either be dogs or cats, thanks to C# unions. It's being serialized nicely, thanks to the new support in system text JSON. Now, one thing important to note, you may have noticed that there's no like discriminator here in the payload. Like there's nothing in this JSON payload that says, and by the way, this is a dog. Like there's no like type property or anything that lets you know like this is a dog or the other one is a cat. So when you're then if you're trying to deserialize a payload like this into like a pet union type, system text JSON will do the best it can. Like it will look at the structure of the JSON, and if it can infer sort of what this is, then it will do the right thing. Like it can tell the difference between, I think, like if you send it in a JSON int versus a JSON string and stuff like that. Although that gets a little dicey with when you're doing web scenarios, because often like a JSON number versus a string that is also a number, often you kind of want to treat those as almost equivalent. So even that's a little tricky for it to deduce. So what you have to do if you want to deserialize these payloads with system text JSON is there's an abstraction where you can configure a classifier, a thing that knows how to look at the payload and understand like, oh, this is a dog, or oh, this is a cat, and that might mean adding some sort of discriminator to your payload so you can actually tell that. So just something to be aware of. Like these are not out of the box discriminated unions. They're just unions. So FYI on that. But they do serialize. And if we then look at the OpenAPI spec, let's pull down the OpenAPI spec for this API, and we look at the schema for the pet type, which is right here. You can see that this is an any of, and it could be either a dog or a cat. So you're getting appropriate schema as well generated for these for this usage of union types in your application. Okay, that situation of like not being able to figure out like what is this? Is it a dog or a cat? Like this sample also kind of is some sense showing that. Like we go back and now look at this other endpoint where we have a post, we map post. In this case, we're sending a pet input union type, and if we look at what pet input looks like, that is either going to be a string or it's going to be a dog. Notice it's not taking a pet. If you actually tried to send a pet, you would need to have some way for the server to understand whether it's actually a cat or a dog, so that it knows how to deal with the serialization of the union type. So you need a classifier in that case, because here it's system text JSON can tell the difference between a string and a dog out of the box. We don't need to add any discriminator. So that's why this demo is carefully crafted that way. So just be aware. If you run into a problem where system text JSON complains that it can't figure out how to deserialize the type, that's probably why you might need actually an explicit classifier. All right, cool. Yeah, so someone's asking about, I wonder what a good discriminator pattern would look like. Would that be an enum, a good, or whatever? And yeah, it depends heavily on your scenario. Like it's the stack is unopinionated. I mean, system text JSON does have some prior art here, I guess, with like class hierarchies. Like if you're sending, deserializing to a base type, and you have a derived type, I think they use like $ type or something like that is the discriminator that they'll put on the wire for dealing with those cases. So you could imagine doing something similar like that, but really depends on your scenario. Okay. I think it's probably worth mentioning that we are also, I mean, you can use unions in Blazor and in your web applications. Like I think somewhere in here I was working on support for this. Let's see, like this unions demo here. Like ideally, where's this thing? So like ideally, you want like a really interesting scenario for Blazor cases. Yeah, this class. Like actually, let me look at. I think the component is actually over here in the shared class library. Like with UI, often you'll have like components that want to take either content as a string or content as like rich UI content. Like think of like a button or label, where sometimes you just throw a string in there and it's fine. But other times you want to have like some rich content, like an image and string, or some more rich HTML as the content for that element. I think that's an interesting scenario for C# unions. Like you could imagine like a child content for like a button component that is itself a union that could be either a string or a render fragment. That kind of works today, but not completely yet in Razor. It's a little awkward. We don't quite yet have the Razor syntax support for handling a union type that might be like a string or something else. Like it kind of messes up our like handling of strings, and also being able to pass in child content. So those are actually Razor compiler features that we're working on to try and improve that scenario. So not quite there yet, but it's an interesting use case, I think, that we're still looking at post preview sec. So something to look forward to. Okay. Any questions more about that? Someone was asking, not sure I would return a discriminator. I would use it for the result pattern. That's interesting. I mean, yeah, like by default, you don't get any discriminator, so you're welcome to absolutely not return any discriminator at all. That's completely up to you. For the result pattern, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but if you want to tell us more, that's kind of interesting. I mean, Youssef, maybe you have some thoughts on this. Like, in a lot of ways, minimal APIs has these result types that kind of look like unions, right? Like your
Yes, I mean, result types are kind of mostly workaround to lack of unions back then, in my opinion. So I think now maybe unions is a thing to use instead of results.
So
Um,
if we had unions, we may have designed minimal APIs a little bit differently. Instead, we kind of had to create our own generic types that kind of mimic what a union does today. Yeah, so that pattern is not really it's not built into minimal APIs, but we have talked about it. I think for .NET 11, we're not planning to do anything super disruptive there, but maybe in the future, someone come up with a clever proposal for how minimal APIs might use union types as sort of a maybe improved version of the result pattern. I don't know. Like we need to talk through it and understand the design to see how it would compare. And every choice you add also can add confusion. If there's two ways of doing the same things, then we have to give guidance on which one is best and so on. Okay, moving on. So that was C# unions. I got some nice little Blazor improvements that I'd love to show. So for this, let's go ahead and close our attacker site. We don't need to look at that anymore. Here is some improvements to Virtualize. So this is our Virtualize control. Like Virtualize is a component we ship in aspnetcore that lets you render big lists of stuff where you're only viewing part of the list at any given point in time. So there's no reason to like render all 10,000 rows in your table or whatever it is. You only need to render the ones that are actually in the virtualized view. And we've been doing a lot of improvements to Virtualize in .NET 11. One of the ones we added in Preview 6 is the ability to initialize the virtualized view at a particular position and then be able to set the position of the scroll bar basically for that virtualized view. So we have these new APIs. There's a initial index that you can set on the virtualized component to say where do you want it to render first, and then there's a scroll to index async API on the virtualized component that you can now get your hands on and allow you to scroll to a particular place. So some examples here, here's this back to top button. You can see that I'm currently at position, looking at item number 500, but if I click back to top, then I'm all the way at the top. If I click jump to last, I'm all the way down at the 10,000th item or whatever it is. And then I can even like pick a specific item, like here, let's scroll to the 2,500th item and jump right to that one. And we're good to go. To show you what that code looks like, here is, I closed it. Let me virtualize scroll demo, this guy. So here's our virtualized component that we're using to render all those items. And you can see this has the new initialized index property that you can just set to whatever you want. And that's the initial item that it will render at the top of the view. And then over here, it's a little hard to see. We're actually getting a ref to the virtualized component, so we can call some APIs on it down below. So here we're capturing the virtualized component in this list variable. And then by doing that, we can now implement those the methods for those various buttons, like go to top. That's just going to call the scroll to index async method to go to position 0, or go to the last position in the virtualized thing, or go to a specific position in the virtualized view. So that's some nice improvements to Virtualize as well. If there's any questions about that. So someone's excited about the Virtualize improvements and hoping that they will trickle to the other component libraries out there. Yeah, component library authors, if these features are useful to you, like let us know how integrating them goes, if there's anything that we need to change and address. Will this virtualize in both directions then? I'm not sure what direction means here. Oh, like horizontal scrolling and vertical scrolling. I don't think we did that. I think we only support vertical virtualization support, but I think we have an issue on our backlog that people have been asking for that. yes, I don't think that's part of the .NET 11 scope. But if that's important to you, give a thumbs up reaction on the corresponding GitHub issue. It's on our backlog. It's just, virtualization is hard to get right. So we're, one step at a time. So as I scroll, let's see, someone else is asking if, oh, that's the wrong thing. So as I scroll up, it'll load them in, or will all the previous ones just lazy load? You have control over that with Virtualize. Like there's an items provider abstraction in Virtualize that you can control how the items get loaded, how much they buffer, and all those types of things. Or if you want to just kind of like load everything in memory and then have just the view over that list be virtualized, that can be done as well. So you have control and flexibility over how things get loaded. And Tyndall was asking, so if I jump to 500, will it virtualize lower items and higher like today? I am not sure. We might have to take that one offline, Tyndall. I'm not actually sure on that one. That would be a great question for Alona. Yeah, no, we'll have to take that one offline. Not actually 100% sure on that one. Okay, cool. Great questions. And yeah, okay, let's go on to the next thing. So back to the blog post. Oh yeah, so OpenAPI 3.2 on by default. We were looking at this earlier. So when I pulled in the OpenAPI spec for this app, you may have noticed that it is of course, an OpenAPI 3.2 specification, which is I think still the latest version of the OpenAPI spec. And this now is just what you get by default in aspnetcore starting in Preview 6. Previously, you had to go in and configure the OpenAPI version by setting some property. We made the change in Preview 6 to just make this the default version. So something to be aware of. If you have clients that don't support 3.2 that you need to still support, you can of course configure an older OpenAPI version and use that instead. But that is now the new default OpenAPI version. So that's cool, latest, greatest. And then I think we want to show, we did unions. Yeah, let's look at the new SignalR features. So I don't have a live demo for this one. I was working on it, didn't quite get it put together. But this has been a long-standing ask for you SignalR users out there, which is support for authentication refresh. So SignalR is, of course, our framework for building real-time applications where you have usually a long-running connection with the server that's bidirectional. You can server can push updates down to the client. It can create a hub where multiple clients are connected to the same hub. So you often have this long-standing connection where you initially authenticated, but you have some authentication token that you've used for that, but it can, of course, later expire. Often you want authentication tokens to be short-lived, but SignalR is a long-lived connection scenario. So we now have the ability in SignalR to refresh that token. There's a new refresh endpoint that's exposed server-side for triggering that refresh. And the .NET client, we haven't done the TypeScript client yet, the JavaScript or TypeScript client yet, but the .NET client now has enabled authentication refresh by default. To turn this on in your hub, you do need to do an explicit API call. So you call enable authentication refresh true, and that will enable support for shorter lived tokens and refreshing them for your SignalR hub. If you want to control how that happens, there's some overloads that you can hook to be able to do that. And that's the wrong button. And then on the hub itself, there's also a new on authentication refresh async method where per hub basis, you can configure what happens when a refresh is attempted. And then it is just handled by default on the client. There are some properties that you can fiddle with in order to tweak the behavior. So I know that a lot of people have been waiting for that. Hopefully this will also help some of our Blazor server scenarios because Blazor server is also based on SignalR and uses those long-running connections. So yeah, I think Marvin was just asking about this. Is this going to help Blazor server as well? We think so. Yes, there's some testing still to do, and we'd love your help with that to validate things. But we think this will make it easier for you to handle authentication cases without having to worry about expired tokens. Cool. All right. Oh, and might as well mention while we're at it that you can now cancel hub invocations from the client. You can pass a cancellation token, and that will now be honored client side. So that's new improvements for SignalR users. A couple other things that I'll just mention in passing. The .NET UserJots tool now supports file-based applications. So if you're really enjoying the new file-based app pattern.NET, where you don't have to have a CSProj file, and you just have a C# file, but you were missing the fact that UserJots didn't actually work with that style of app, that is now supported. So you can use the UserJots tool to create dev time tokens for testing and development purposes. That's available there. And there was also a short circuit. Yeah, this one. I think this was a community contribution. There's a new short circuit attribute that you can put on your endpoints, whether it's a controller or a minimal AI endpoint, to say that you'd like to short circuit the pipeline for quickly. This can be useful for things like I think it's like static files and the like, where you don't need to execute the rest of the pipeline. You just want to end it for performance sake. So last couple updates there. All right. So those are the new features. Let me see if there's any other questions that people are curious about. So a couple people asking about WASM and WebAssembly improvements in this release. I don't think there were any major .NET WebAssembly or Blazor WebAssembly improvements in Preview 6. None that I'm off the top of my head. Again, the main investment that the .NET WebAssembly runtime team and the Blazor WebAssembly folks are working on is the runtime consolidation effort, which is taking the existing mono-based .NET WebAssembly runtime and basically rebuilding a new runtime on top of Core CLR, so we don't have to keep maintaining mono as a separate runtime. Doing a cost savings there, and also leveraging all the modern investments that are available in Core CLR. That's expected to be. I mean, I think it's available to try out. It's like still being stood up though, so it's not really. It's partially functional is what I would call it. Likely to crash, and the performance still is not great. Like there's a bunch of work that still needs to be done on it. I think it was in Preview 5 that we said like it's at least there that you could try it. But just be aware that a lot of things just don't work on it yet. It's still very much a work in progress. We expect it to still be in preview even when we ship .NET 11. And then in .NET 12 is when we expect to stabilize that runtime and flip over from the mono-based runtime to the new Core CLR-based runtime. So that's happening there. Things that we expect to also be lit up as part of that effort are a lot of the WASM 3.0 features, like memory, 64-bit memory support and so on. So a lot of those investments are happening on the Core CLR side, as opposed to doing that work in mono just to throw it away again once we get to the Core CLR based runtime. So if you're wondering why a bunch of runtime improvements aren't happening, it's because they're all blocked on getting the runtime consolidation effort done. Blazor has the multi-threading support for .NET 12. Always, right? That's always the next release. We haven't. We're just actually starting conversations about .NET 12 planning. I mean, we got to finish .NET 11 first. We haven't finished .NET 11, so give us let us finish the current release, make sure it's in good shape and ready for you folks to put into production and get all the perf wins and functional wins. But we are starting to think about .NET 12. Nothing to say about multi-threading in 12 at this point. It's way too early for us to be making any sort of commitments like that. But the runtime consolidation is committed. That is something that we have to get done in the 12 timeframe. And yeah, so you didn't see anything about WASM in the release notes. Yep, I don't think there was anything in Preview 6. There have been other things that we've done in previous releases. So like if you haven't checked out our new .NET Blazor web worker project template, we now have a project template in .NET 11 that helps you set up the .NET runtime to run in a background web worker. So if you have like some CPU intensive stuff that you don't want to have run on the UI thread, this is a way that you can offload that .NET code to run in the web worker, effectively like a separate process at that point. It's not true multi-threading, but it's a sort of a peace offering to all your people who've been waiting for multi-threading for so long. It gives you a way to at least handle that fairly common case where you want to move CPU intensive work off of the UI thread. But yeah, the current runtime is still the mono one. The Core CLR one, you have to opt into it, and you're welcome to try it, but don't expect it to be anywhere near production ready yet. Like it still needs quite a bit of work. Let's see. Oh my goodness, so many questions. What else we got here? When will you? when will you move to yearly versioning for .NET? Or if we were to follow the Aspire pattern, right, with prime numbers, we move to prime numbers. I think Aspire, instead of doing incremental versions, decided to jump to like Aspire 13 or whatever. No plans. Like we are sticking with integers as far as I am sure, as far as I'm aware. Yeah, I think. Yeah, John Galloway. Nice to see you, John. John was our earlier host. He's mentioned that the Core SignalR work on the Maui side has been making great progress, and they have pretty much flipped over at this point. WASM is sort of the last piece of work in that broader effort to get everybody off of Mono and onto the Core SignalR runtime. Okay, hopefully we got to most of your questions. Get excited. If you haven't tried .NET 11 Preview 6, please do. Please download it, try it out. If you have an opportunity to actually try it out with your production apps, like with your day-to-day development, and see how it holds together, that would be tremendously useful to us. When the first release candidate comes out, that is typically a go live release, so you can actually deploy it and kick the tires in a production environment. So we'd love for you to do that once those are available. We should expect that in about two months. But give it a try out the new features. Let us know how it goes. Youssef, thank you so much for showing off validation. That was great. We look forward to having you back on the community stand-up for future feature demos. And I think that's it for today. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. Until next time, happy coding. Bye, folks.
Goodbye.